What's up, Flannelverts? It is week 4, and we have morning football on Sunday. The Vikings and Steelers are in Ireland starting at 9:30 Eastern time. I'm going to break down the game tonight. People ask me, you're going to wake up early and do the stream before this late in the morning. Obviously, anybody who knows me knows there was no chance in hell I was waking up early to do this stream. I don't think we're missing out on much information. We are missing out on one big piece of information that would maybe affect things, which is that Joey Porter Jr. is questionable for the game, full participant in practice today. He has been limited throughout the week. I think he is still truly questionable. Good chance he plays, though, after being a full participant today. So that is going to change things up a little bit. Good to see many of you in chat. Yes, Pepper Tony, Fimps, good to see you. What's up, Steven? Yeah, I wore my purple flannel for you guys with my Vikings hat. What's going on, Ricky? Good to see you. All right. We're going to be going position by position: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. I don't know if I'm going to do the whole building my lineups on stream thing. I'm going to keep this one a little bit short just because it is getting late. But we'll see. Maybe I'll gain energy throughout the show, and I will do it. I'll probably run at least one sim. I just don't know how many I'll do. We're going to start again at quarterbacks. By the way, while you're coming in, please do like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. Trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Have a long ways to go. Could use your support there. If you're interested in checking out Run the Sims, you can use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment on any of their products. Highly recommend it. I've been loving it so far. All right, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. Yeah, I am a night owl. I think my age might be catching up to me just a little bit. I loved last year. I loved streaming in the evening. This year, I still stay up really late, but later in the evening, I just don't feel like streaming super late anymore as much. I don't know. So I'm still a night owl. Just I feel like streaming more in the afternoon generally lately, or like the early evening. Once it gets late, I'm like, I just want to chill at this point in the night. All right, we're going with the quarterbacks, starting with Carson Wentz. Projected for a ton of ownership here, 61% flex ownership, 10% cap ownership. He is only 9,000, so pretty cheap price tag for a starting quarterback. Look at this projection, just 14.6 projection for a starting quarterback, also fairly low. I think that's going to be kind of the story of this game. We're not going to have really high projections. I should note, usually when I'm doing these showdown slates, I've done like a whole article on it and put a lot of research into it. Because I'm doing an article here, I've spent just the past hour kind of looking through some of these stats. I haven't even looked at the price tags yet or the ownership that closely. So I'm kind of seeing some of this as you guys are seeing it for the first time. So just double checking here. Yeah, projected for 66% flex ownership, 6% captain ownership. So a little bit lower at RG. Seems okay. We honestly don't have much we want to spend up for on this slate, so I have no real issue with 71% ownership going to Carson Wentz. Yeah, I think that's probably fine. 10% at captain, maybe a little bit high for Wentz. So if he comes in at 6%, that's probably more reasonable for Wentz. We can look at pass rate over expectation week by week. Wentz obviously only started one game for the Vikings. In that game, they were basically neutral, negative 1.3%. Pass rate over expectation. They've come closer to neutral every week so far, and with Wentz, I kind of wonder if Kevin O'Connell just trusts him a little bit more than JJ McCarthy. He's not treating him with kid gloves, so I wouldn't be that surprised if they end up with a pass rate, a positive pass rate over expectation this week. I don't want to read too much into these numbers in general. I think they'll use him a fair amount. 9,000, obviously great price tag there. With Wentz, sure, he's capable of rushing. I think people were citing last week that his last start prior to last week, he had actually rushed like 18 times, something insane like that for an old guy like Carson Wentz. He's not even 33 years old yet. We call him an old guy. He's not even that old yet, but he's in his 30s. Rushed 18 times in his last start before this one. Kind of crazy. So he's capable of rushing, but again, he rushed for 4 yards last game. He typically rushes for like single digit yards per game. So don't get excited thinking that he is Lamar Jackson out there. So generally, I'm going to be stacking up Carson Wentz. If I were using an optimizer, I would set a rule to always stack him up. If I have him in the captain spot, I would want him to be multi-stacked. Because I'm using Sims, I'm not setting any of those kind of rules. I think they're going to appropriately stack him up as much as he should be. But those are the rules I would use if I were using an optimizer. Aaron Rodgers, 9,800, so 800 more expensive than Carson Wentz, projected for 44% flex ownership, 7% captain ownership. So a little bit less ownership going to Aaron Rodgers, probably largely as a result of the price tag. He actually projects a little bit lower than Carson Wentz as well. We can look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Also, kind of a not bad matchup so far for quarterbacks. It is the 5th best matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed against Pittsburgh so far. I don't totally buy that it's going to hold. I think that's Joey Porter Jr. has missed the last 2 games. So I think that might be kind of affecting things a little bit. I know they're missing linebacker Alex Highsmith in this game. Maybe helps the Vikings a little bit. But if they get Joey Porter Jr. back, I would not expect this to hold. I think they actually have a pretty good secondary, Jalen Ramsey there. So I'm not totally buying these numbers, but so far it is the 5th best matchup for quarterbacks. Actually better for rushing quarterbacks than passing quarterbacks, but positive for both. I'll also look up for Aaron Rodgers. It is the 2nd to worst matchup for quarterbacks. I do believe that. I think the Vikings just have an awesome defense. They're also missing Van Ginkel. They're missing Blake Cashman. They're a little bit banged up on defense. So I don't love that, but I still think they have a really strong defense. So not a great matchup for Aaron Rodgers. All of this is reflected in the totals. This game is a total of like 41. So not expected to be a very high scoring game. Again, I think the Rodgers ownership numbers, no real issue for it, in part because we just don't have that many great players that we want to play a ton of. So because we don't have much that I'm like, well, I really want to play all these great receivers. I guess the Vikings have a few, but we just don't have many that are going to project all that well. So ultimately, I think the ownership on the quarterbacks is totally fine. All right. And again, Rodgers always stacking them up. If I have him in the captain spot, I want him to be stacked up with multiple pass catchers. I think you can certainly consider Jaylen Warren a pass catcher as part of that equation. What's going on, Ireland? I need the luck of the rush. Is that you calling the Irish the rush? I don't know. Chris, if you watch my show with Scott, you should know my favorite stack as well as I do. Do I know my favorite stack? I think it's honestly probably just the Raiders. Okay. Let's move on to running backs. So my instinct here is that we're probably okay leaving a lot of salary on the table in this one. This is probably not one where I would be inclined to use the full salary cap, but I could be wrong about that. We actually have some pretty strong pay options. So maybe I'll change my mind on that as we go. On the Viking side, we have Jordan Mason took over for Aaron Jones. They had been splitting pretty evenly over the first couple weeks. And then last week with Aaron Jones out, we saw Jordan Mason just take over as the bell cow and just crush the Bengals. Loved to see that. Then we've got Xavier Scott, Cam Akers here as well. Mason, 10,400 projected for 37% flex ownership, 24% captain ownership. We can look at the bell cow report. Actually, let's just look at last week because I think that's kind of the only relevant week for the Vikings. All right, last week, Jordan Mason, 16 carries. I don't believe he played a snap in the fourth quarter, or at least didn't play much in the fourth quarter. Vikings absolutely dominated the game. He had been dominating carries up until the fourth quarter. So don't read too much into 16, 8, and 5 being the rushing numbers last week. It was the Jordan Mason show until the Vikings had the game well in hand. 16 carries, did not see a target. So I was kind of hoping that this is going to change this year. So far, it has not changed. Jordan Mason is not being targeted much, even though he is still running, 45% of the routes last week, similar to what he was doing with the Niners last year. He was running a ton of routes. I kept on thinking eventually they're going to target him, right? And then they just never did. That is kind of holding true with the Vikings so far as well. Xavier Scott, Cam Akers. Maybe let me actually split this out, because I want to see to what extent. I'm fairly certain didn't see much work until the fourth quarter, but I do want to fact check myself on this. Yeah, so in the fourth quarter, 0 snaps for Jordan Mason, 5 for Xavier Scott, 7 for Cam Akers. In the third quarter, 12 for Mason, 4 for Scott, 0 for Akers. Quarters 1 and 2. So quarter 1, Jordan Mason, the only one of the running backs to see any snaps. He had 12. Quarter 2, we had another 11 for Mason. Xavier Scott actually came in for 7 snaps and 4 carries in the second quarter. That's kind of interesting because the game was still relatively, I think, in hand for most of the second quarter. Relatively close, not out of hand. Still in the second quarter. Cam Akers. So Cam Akers didn't play a snap in the first half or the third quarter. Did not play a single snap until the fourth quarter when the game was in hand for the Vikings. At that point, he got 5 carries late. So it seems as though it is Jordan Mason RB1, Xavier Scott RB2. But it is worth noting they just signed Cam Akers, brought him up, I believe, right before the week started last week. So I don't think that this is necessarily going to always hold true. It might just be that he hadn't been with the team in this go around all that long, wasn't quite ready. But what we see here, I think it appears that it is Xavier Scott, the RB2 behind Jordan Mason. But Jordan Mason, clearly just the bell cow, saw 23 snaps in the first half to Xavier Scott's 7 and 0 for Cam Akers. He's going to get the lion's share of the work for the Vikings. We can look at schedule adjusted fantasy points. Smithwick's, delicious. Love a good Irish beer. So far on the season, pretty middling matchup for Jordan Mason. You can see here. Actually, it's better for Mason as a running back who doesn't catch passes, who gets most of the production on the ground, because it is neutral overall, but it's actually a positive matchup for quarterbacks on the ground and a negative matchup for quarterbacks through the air. Very small sample size. This is just 3 games. I'm not reading too much into it, but it would seem to fit Mason's skill set as a pure runner. He was just really good last week. The Steelers allow a lot of long runs. Mason pretty good at busting off some long runs. Should be a pretty good matchup for Jordan Mason in general. One of the stronger plays on the slate. Obviously, not having the pass catching does lower both his floor and his ceiling quite a bit. So I don't know if he gets to 24% captain ownership, 37% flex. I don't know that I get there. Again, we don't have too many players that we absolutely love in this slate. I don't totally hate it. Like it's a pretty strong matchup with the Steelers in general, and he has a great workload. And I think he's a talented running back. That's high enough that I don't know that I get to where the field is. If RG's numbers hold, 15% captain ownership, love that. Much more into that. 28% flex ownership. These numbers just seem way lower. But I would be really excited to play Jordan Mason at 43% total ownership. That would be a fantastic play. So it really kind of depends on where the ownership comes in here. I suspect. I think I suspect that the run the Sims numbers are closer, just due to the lack of options on the slate. Just not that many great players to get to. Steelers looking pretty beatable this year, and Mason coming off the huge game against the Bengals. I think these numbers might come closer to being accurate, but I would want to be, probably right around the projected ownership here for Run the Sims. All right. Yes, good beer plug. They do not pay me, sadly. Uh-oh. Did not see that. Steven says, off topic, but did you see the Raiders elevated 2 tight ends? I wonder if they're worried about Bowers. He was still wearing a knee brace as of today, Scott tells me. So, yeah, certainly a possibility. How many targets did Mason get last game? I think he got 0, but let me double check myself on that. He got 0 targets last game. So yeah, not super involved in the passing game. Behind Jordan Mason, so Xavier Scott, he's 2,400. Kind of tough to get there with Mason clearly being the bell cow there, and that's been what the coach speech says. Like, we trust him to be a bell cow. Like, he's certainly capable of taking a huge workload. So I think as long as the game is close, it's probably going to be the Jordan Mason show at 2,400. I guess I'm fine with Xavier Scott. He does have the kind of both directions of like, is he just going to get squeezed out by Jordan Mason getting all the workload if the game stays closer? But also, is Cam Akers going to be more involved the longer he's with the Vikings? I would not be that surprised by that either. So I don't. Let me take a look again at what was the route participation, and I'm going to remove the splits here just so we can see the full game. 20.7% route participation for Xavier Scott, 1 target on the game. Maybe I'll bring it back to, no, I don't think the first 2 games were just not really relevant because Aaron Jones is there. So we don't have much of a sample size to go on here. Maybe Xavier Scott, the better pass catching running back, and will be more involved in the running game. I don't know. It's a little bit tough to make a case for him, but a 10% ownership, no real issue getting there. Just not something that I'm like dying to get above the field on Xavier Scott if he gets 10% ownership. RG has him at 3%. I would actually like him quite a bit at 3% ownership. There he becomes fairly interesting as the RB2 with, some standalone value. Who knows? Maybe now with, more time to prepare, they want to use him as the pass catching running back more. Maybe he is a little bit more involved. And then he also has the contingent upside if anything were to happen to Mason. And we saw in that last game, complete blowout, he was still used in the fourth quarter a little bit. Cam Akers kind of got more of the work in the fourth quarter, so maybe has more of that blowout contingent upside, but Xavier Scott's still involved. So I think Xavier Scott getting to around 10% feels okay to me if he's going to be somewhat involved, and there's a wide range of outcomes there. Cam Akers kind of hoping for a blowout, or it could be a change in his role situation now that he has been with the Vikings a week longer. They used him a little bit last year. He was eating into Aaron Jones's workload a little bit late last year. They cut him, so they clearly don't love him, but they are familiar with him. Wouldn't be that surprising if he sees his workload increase a little bit. Ultimately, love Mason. I think Scott is probably my preference of the backup running backs. Akers, I think, is fine in a 150 set. Steelers side, Jaylen Warren, questionable, but expected to play as of today. And pretty cheap here at 8,400. He actually stands out as a really nice value. Projected for 45% flex ownership, 20% captain ownership. If you just look at the snap shares, you can see Jaylen Warren up from in week 46.3% up to 57.6%, 77.6% in week 3. So pretty awesome workload there for Jaylen Warren. I will show you, it's obviously not a great matchup with the Vikings, and here I will pull up the full bell cow report for the full season here to show you the workload. So on the season, Jaylen Warren, 43 rushing attempts, 33% route participation, 12 targets. So he is involved in the passing game, which is obviously really helpful for a running back in a tough matchup. And this is a tough matchup for running backs. Vikings are, do I have this split right? Yeah. Middle of the road for the Vikings against Pittsburgh. Actually, I was misreading this earlier or something. Looks like it is an above average matchup so far for running backs. What I was going to say is I think this is misleading. So it actually so far in the season is showing as an above average matchup. And with Blake Cashman out, maybe they do benefit a little bit there. Running backs against the Vikings could actually end up being a somewhat positive matchup here. Worse for running backs through the air, better on the ground. Which maybe doesn't necessarily play to Warren's skill set, but they use him in all facets of the game. I do think that the Vikings defense has been a little bit worse than they would be because they have just not been able to keep the ball on offense at all through the first 2 games. So their defense has just been completely worn out for the first 2 games. We saw that they were much better against the Bengals when the offense was actually able to sustain drives. So I don't really buy the defensive metric for the Vikings. And here's where I'm, being a homer, watching all the games, have a stronger opinion than I might be on teams that I don't watch. But it was my impression that just the defense got worse because they got totally worn out by being on the field the entire game. And I think in a game with the Steelers, I'm not as concerned about that. I think the defense will hold up better. So, yeah, the metrics actually don't look bad for Jaylen Warren. I suspect that the Vikings defense will be better if the offense can just sustain some drives. But not it doesn't show up as a terrible matchup for Jaylen Warren, and he's just objectively a strong value here at 8,400 given his workload. Again, we've seen his workload come up every single game, 77.6% of snaps in week 3 on the season. Again, 43 carries through 3 games, so not a bad workload there. And then also 12 targets, just involved all around. Looks like a really strong play. Maybe my favorite play on the Steelers. Warren looks great. Behind him, Kenneth Gainwell, a little bit too expensive. He's 4,400, projected for 20% flex ownership. So if you were going to be contrarian, I'd be more okay with the $4,400 price tag. But because he's getting this much ownership, I'm not super inclined to go to a ton of Kenneth Gainwell. The snap shares declined each week, 53.7%, 42.4%, 28.6%. He has been getting the inside the 5 carries, if I remember correctly. I didn't actually look this up, but let me look that up. Kenneth Gainwell, yeah, 33% of the inside the 5 carries. Actually, Jaylen Warren has gotten more of them. And I think he got one in the last game because Jaylen Warren, it was one of those, like Jaylen Warren brought it down to the goal line, and then they had to take Warren out just because he had worn down too much, and then they brought Kenneth Gainwell in. So not super concerned about that from a Warren standpoint. Tough for me to get to Kenneth Gainwell with his workload so far on the year. 16 carries, so just over 5 carries per game. He does have 10 targets. That's actually pretty strong. Five carries and 3 targets. Just a little bit too expensive here at 4,400, and the workload has been declining as we saw. So the numbers overall, the averages look okay, but he's been seeing a declining workload. Kaleb Johnson, we'll see if he's even active. I don't believe he played a snap. Let me look if that's true. Did not play a snap in the last game. 3.7%, 3.4%. We saw he had the big bungled a kick return in, I believe that was week 2, if I'm remembering correctly. The coaches were asked, are they planning on using it? Mike Tomlin was asked on whether Kaleb Johnson will get 0 snaps again this week. He said, "We'll see. Sometimes when you have mistakes, you got to take a step back, but I've really been pleased with his approach to business and work. It's more about the day-to-day for a young player. I think he's positioned himself to be a contributor this week, but those decisions don't happen in a vacuum, but he certainly won't be back there on kickoffs." Yeah, I don't know. It's 400 on Kaleb Johnson. You see that, you think of like this was an exciting rookie that everybody thought was going to be an awesome fantasy asset this year. Now he is 400 on a showdown slate. It seems appealing to me, but he just might be a 0. We'll see if he's inactive. I think even if he is active, there's a pretty good chance he doesn't play. I don't know. He might have some contingent upside if he's active. I think at 400, he'd be worth playing a bit in a 150 set. I think just from in a blowout, maybe they want to get their exciting rookie running back going a little bit, give him some opportunities in a game after blowing the kickoff. Maybe they want to get him a little bit more comfortable in game situations. So if he's active in a 150 set, I've played worse plays, but not a priority by any means. The floor, maybe the likeliest scenario is 0 for Kaleb Johnson. I think that's it as far as running backs go. Let's move on to receivers. I'll check in with chat. Take a sip of my beer. How you guys doing tonight? Anything fun on Saturday night? Is this the fun? Yeah, you might need to get the right kicker. I hope not. I hope this is going to be a fun game. Don't have a ton of faith in it. Justin Jefferson, and first note, as we get to Minnesota receivers, again, Joey Porter Jr. currently questionable. If he's out, I think it's a really strong spot for the Vikings receivers. If Joey Porter Jr. returns, I think that really throws a lot into question. It has so far on the season. We can look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Strong matchup for receivers against Pittsburgh. Looks like it's about the 13th or so best matchup for receivers against Pittsburgh. I really think that if Joey Porter Jr. returns, he's missed 2 of the 3 games. That makes a difference for the Steelers defense. So it'll make the Vikings receivers look a little bit worse. Also, it's sort of hard to evaluate the receivers because Jordan Addison returning from suspension for the first time. So far we've had Jefferson, Naylor, and Thielen basically taking up all the work for the Vikings. Let's pull that up. So on the season so far this year, Jefferson 90% route participation, Naylor 89%, Thielen 77%, and then the next top receiver is Tim Jones at 5.6%. So it's really just been a 3 receiver show so far for the Vikings, but all of them playing pretty significant snaps, running significant routes. So they were all fairly involved here. Only 6 targets for Thielen through 3 games. Saw a 2-point conversion. I would think had some opportunities, but really just a 3 running back show so far for the Vikings. Quote on Jordan Addison's return, kind of interesting, so I'll read it off. If I can find it. First of all, the coaches kept talking about Jordan Addison like he had one of the best camps for us. He looked great. Okay, this is offense coordinator Wes Phillips on September 23rd. On Jordan Addison's return, he said, much like a lot of guys that come back, whether it's from injury or whatever, I don't know that you're looking to play him 80 snaps if that's what we get. We see it like we have 4 starting receivers with Jordan back. We want to keep all those guys fresh. We want to use their skill sets and talents uniquely and individually. Jordan brings a lot to the table. So it sounds like they're not just going to give Addison a full workload in his first game back. I think more likely they're going to work him in. I don't think slowly, but I think it's going to be just 1 game maybe of not a full workload for Jordan Addison. I was trying to figure out like, all right, who do we really think this cuts into? I can't tell. I can't decide if it's going to be Thielen or Naylor. And so I kind of think it's going to be Jefferson retains 90% route participation. I think that it's going to be that Addison cuts into both Naylor and Thielen, and they all end up around like 60 to 70% route participation. I don't know how it's going to break down exactly, but I'd say like my guess would be Addison 75%, Thielen 65%, Naylor 55%. You know, I'm just throwing out random numbers. Like I think it's going to be kind of a gross committee of the receivers. And what I was looking at was, so if you look at like where they were lining up, this is something I was looking at earlier, doesn't really give me a ton of indication. So we had last year Jordan Addison 67% wide, 33% from the slot. Jalen Naylor split 50-50 last year in terms of out wide and from the slot. And then you look at this year, so Addison more out wide than in the slot last year. But it wasn't like, now that he's running like 80% from the slot. And then again, the Vikings receivers this year, Naylor's at 57% and 43%. Thielen's at 47%, 52%. So they're all kind of lining up all over. Nobody is like the, always slot receiver for the Vikings. I think there's a lot of ways this could go with the receivers, but my guess is that it is Addison getting the second highest route participation tomorrow, followed by, I think it will be Thielen over Naylor, but I'm not super confident in that. I think there's that's the part that I think I'm even less confident in who the Vikings prefer between Thielen and Naylor at this point. All right. So ultimately, Justin Jefferson, 10,800 projected for 37% flex ownership, 23% cap and ownership. I do prefer him over Jordan Mason. They're coming in at basically the same ownership, around the same price. They actually have the exact same projection here. But just I think the pass catching brings up his floor quite a bit and brings up his ceiling relative to Mason. So my preference of the Viking spend ups would be Justin Jefferson. Then you've got Jordan Addison. Again, he's 7,000 projected for 25% flex ownership, 2% cap and ownership. No real issue with that. Again, even if he runs 75% of the routes like I'm predicting, I think that's enough for Jordan Addison to have a big game. I will like both of them a lot more if Joey Porter Jr. is out. Maybe Joey Porter Jr. is limited anyway. We'll see, but it's a soft tissue issue. I'd be kind of surprised if they bring him back if they're not ready to just use him full time. Then you've got Naylor and Thielen. Interesting that it's Thielen is more expensive than Naylor here. 4%, sorry, 10% flex ownership going to Naylor, 1% to Thielen. That would be, I mean, I would love that if we get Thielen at 1%. Yeah, 7% here. I actually think Thielen is a great play here at 4,000. And Naylor, I actually think they're both great plays because of the wide range of outcomes of how this could go. One of these receivers could still be running 70% of the routes. I think they're both capable of spike weeks in kind of different ways. But I think, yeah, both very live for a touchdown. Thielen live to just see a bunch of targets. Naylor live for a big splash play. I think both of these players are capable of paying off these price tags, and it wouldn't be all that surprising. So I actually think at relatively low ownership here, I like both Naylor and Thielen quite a bit. Thielen getting lower ownership on both sites, probably my preference of the two of them. Naylor, I think, has the higher upside. But I think both look pretty great, honestly. Don't think you want to mess with Tim Jones, Ty Felton, Miles Price, any other receiver on the Vikings. I think it's just those four. But yeah, I think the tertiary options look like really strong plays here. Gonna get lost in the shuffle. So yeah, I like the Vikings. I like Naylor and Thielen at relatively low ownership here. We also have sort of a mess on the Steelers side, so we'll see how much ownership their receivers are getting. On the Steelers side, we have DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. I don't know if we're going to get to any Scotty Wilson or Ben Skowronek, but we at least have those top three. DK Metcalf is 9,400, projected for 34% flex ownership, 7% captain ownership. In terms of schedule adjusted matchup, it actually shows up as the worst matchup in the NFL for receivers by a lot. Look at this, negative 20.3 matchup for receivers against the Vikings. That is rough for receivers against the Vikings. I don't buy that it's going to hold up this big of a gap between the Vikings and the second best defense against receivers, but I do buy that they're going to remain a top 5 defense in the league. One of the best defenses. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up as the best defense in the league against opposing receivers. I do think that they have a really strong defense. Again, not really buying this extent, but yeah, I think it's a really tough spot for the Steelers. So they should have opportunities here. They're not getting really high ownership. DK Metcalf, I think actually probably a little bit over owned here at 34%, just given the matchup. Actually, that's not what let's look at 2025. %86% route participation, target share of just 19% for DK Metcalf, 17 targets on the year. Not really the player that we thought he was going to be coming in, at least in terms of his usage so far. Very, very disappointing for DK Metcalf on the season. ADOT of just 5.8. They're just not getting anything going. Vikings bring a ton of pressure. I think they're gonna get to Aaron Rodgers, give him some issues here. The price tag is fine. I think I prefer the quarterbacks to DK Metcalf. It's close. Actually, I take that back. I think I prefer DK Metcalf at least to Aaron Rodgers, just because it's easier, with unlimited big plays. It's easier for a receiver to pay off than a quarterback, again, because of the scoring dynamics on DraftKings. So I actually think I prefer DK Metcalf to Aaron Rodgers at lower ownership. I think that he's a fine play just because the ownership is low enough that even in a tough matchup, he's DK Metcalf. He's a freak athlete. Would not be that surprising to see him break off a big play, even against a really tough defense in the Vikings. So ultimately, I'm coming around to, I think DK Metcalf is a pretty strong, like relatively contrarian play here, where we have, frankly, limited options to get excited about. Yeah, 31% here, so similar ownership. Yeah, 7% captain ownership seems fine. Like, I'm not super excited about this ownership number. I think that he's like basically the ownership is about right on DK Metcalf. Calvin Austin, 6,200, just too expensive. So he's like got the second best role on the Steelers, but what is that worth? 14 targets on the year. That's just over 4 targets per game, or just under 5 targets per game, however you want to look at it. 15.9% target share. They're not throwing the ball much, and then they're spreading the ball around when they do throw it. So Calvin Austin, yeah, he's had the best role on the Steelers, but that just has not been worth all that much. So he's a little bit too expensive for his role at 6,200, and getting too much ownership, 26% and 2% for Calvin Austin in a really tough matchup. I don't know. I think that this is like his role is about as good as like a third receiver on most teams. So just he's getting a lot of ownership because he's nominally the second receiver here. I'm not loving it for Calvin Austin. Obviously capable of breaking off a big one and paying it off, but just too expensive there. Roman Wilson 200 projected for 7% flex ownership. I think that might be more viable even in a more limited role. 28% route participation on the year for Roman Wilson. How has that moved? Yeah, 18% in week 1 to 39% in week 2, 25% in week 3. I think just because the price tag is 200, he's a lot more capable of paying that off. Much easier to pay that off than Calvin Austin. One touchdown, one big play for Roman Wilson pays it off. For Calvin Austin, like 6,200 is pretty hefty price tag. Like that's only $800 cheaper than Jordan Addison. Give me Addison every time there. So I like Roman Wilson a bit. Don't love Calvin Austin at ownership in the 20s. DK Metcalf I think is fine just because he's he's a freak capable of putting up a huge play on anyone. Any other notes on the receivers? Yeah, I don't think so. Let's move on to tight ends. All right. Tight ends on the Vikings. We finally saw TJ Hawkinson break out last week, his first game with Carson Wentz. Love to see that. Don't know if it was Wentz. I don't know if it was the matchup, but really nice game for TJ Hawkinson against the Bengals. He's 5,400, 31% projected flex ownership, 3% captain ownership. Again, this is another spot where I'm like, he's cheaper than give me TJ Hawkinson every day over Calvin Austin. I think he looks like a fairly strong play here. We can look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends, the best matchup in the NFL against Pittsburgh by far. So great matchup for TJ Hawkinson. Again, last week we saw pretty good usage for Hawkinson. The route participation, well, that came down because of the blowout, but a really strong game in that one. Here we can pull up. Which one do I want to do? Fantasy points. From 4.5 to 2.2 to 15.9 fantasy points in his first game with Carson Wentz. Now gets an even better matchup than he had last week. Again, they're missing Alex Highsmith. We'll see if Joey Porter's in. The matchup will get tougher if Joey Porter is in, but not really for Hawkinson. I think Porter would be a bigger issue for Jefferson and Addison. So I think it's a nice spot for TJ Hawkinson. I'm fine with this level of ownership. I think he actually makes for a really strong captain play at 3% ownership. I think that would be he'd be one of my favorite captains on this slate. Josh Oliver is just kind of the classic backup tight end. He scored a touchdown last week. When he scores touchdowns, he'll probably do okay for 1,600, but he's not a huge fantasy asset. Ben Urosek is out, so maybe he sees a little bit more route participation. But yeah, not something I'm really targeting. Just kind of a hope for a touchdown, play him in a 150 set, but otherwise not somebody you really need to play a ton of. Jonnu Smith, questionable, but I believe expected to play. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I'm pretty sure the latest on Jonnu is that he's going to play or expected to play. If he doesn't play, then we can fire up some Pat Freiermuth. But if Jonnu Smith, Bill Krosky-Merritt expected to play. I thought he was going to be out. Interesting. If we get Jonnu Smith in. He is the pretty clear preference over Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers tight ends. Let's look at route participation on the season so far. It is Jonnu Smith 56.7%, Pat Freiermuth 48.5%. But then if you look at the weekly route share, I believe it is moving in the right direction for Jonnu. Yeah, Jonnu up from 52.9%, 51.3%, 70.8% in week 3 for Jonnu route participation. Pat Freiermuth 41.2, 59, 41.7. So actually came down after a spike in week 2. So Jonnu, I think, is the clear preference of the Steelers tight ends on the season. Jonnu 13 targets, Freiermuth 10. So not a huge gap from that standpoint, but I think Jonnu seems to be moving in the right direction. Freiermuth in the wrong direction. And we don't see a huge disparity in price or ownership. Jonnu a little bit more expensive. Freiermuth actually getting higher ownership there. I prefer just going to Jonnu Smith with the better role, higher upside there. Neither of them really get Jonnu at 1% captain ownership. RG has Jonnu even lower owned, sub 20%. Both of them 18.5 for Jonnu, 17 for Freiermuth. Both of them quite playable if these are the ownership numbers. But Jonnu, to me, is the preference of the two of them. Two of the better value options on the slate, though. Darnell Washington, I don't think you need to get to if the other two tight ends are both healthy. 16.5% route participation on the season for Washington, just one target through 3 games. Classic backup tight end. You can, he's the third string tight end. You can hope that he scores a touchdown. They run a lot of 2 tight end sets. Both viable and viable in the same lineup if you wanted to go to the Steelers tight ends. Again, where's the matchup here? Middling matchup, basically just neutral matchup for tight ends so far on the year. All right, let's move on. Kickers and defenses. What's up, Mike? Yeah, I mean, I get it that his injury scares you, but I think he practiced, and I'll have to double check the practice report, but I believe he practiced in full today. Gainwell gets some work for sure, but he's been losing some of his workload. So he's kind of moving in the wrong direction from early on getting, some reasonable work to the Jaylen Warren takeover over time. All right. Defenses and kickers. Will Reichard, 4,800 projected for 19% and 1% ownership. I think that this could be a really gross game. So yeah, I'm going to like the defense and kickers. If the ownership does not get out of hand, I think Reichard looks great. I think the Vikings defense, 5,800 expensive, but they pressure quarterbacks quite a bit. Aaron Rodgers has not been great under pressure this year. He's a wily vet also, threw, I think, 11 interceptions last year, not immune to throwing some interceptions. So against a great Vikings defense, I think Aaron Rodgers probably struggles here. So if the Vikings do come in at 11% ownership, that's another one. Like I'd much rather have the Vikings defense than Calvin Austin. I think they look pretty great here. Reichard looks great. Boswell, 16% ownership. Steelers, 9% ownership. Honestly, like those numbers as well. I think this is a pretty strong kickers and defenses slate. I know some of you will hate to hear that, but I think the Steelers defense is probably better than they have played so far. If Joey Porter plays, I'm going to like them quite a bit at 9%, going against Carson Wentz. Chris Boswell, 16% ownership. I mean, if the game stays close, he should have some opportunities. He's 5,200. I think he's a pretty fine play as well. I do prefer both the Vikings kicker and defense at not much higher in ownership, but I think all 4 are actually strong plays here. All right, I said I'll run at least one set of the Sims here. All right, and I'll take any questions if you have them. So for the first set, I'm not going to change any of the inputs. Just going to go to settings. I'll put in 20,000 lineup, see if I get that many. 15,000 size of contest field because I play large field stuff. Number of sims, 10,000. I'm going to do top heavy payout structure. I'm going to choose shady portfolio diversifier. I'm going to do, I don't remember the number of lineups I'm playing. Something like that. I'll do 150 for a demonstration. No, I'm going to play my actual lineups. Screw it. I'm probably not going to do this again in the morning. Oh, fewer than I thought I was playing. Okay. And most of that's in the mini-max. All right. I'm going to format my spreadsheet, by which I mean make sure my highest dollar stuff is at the top. Maybe I don't want to do that. All right, let's see. So far, it's been the lower dollar stuff that's generally been my best, which was just kind of random for me. All right, we are going to run some sims. All right, we're going. Do you think Scotty Miller will get a chance? I mean, not much of a chance. Favorite captain, probably Justin Jefferson. I like Jaylen Warren quite a bit at captain. A little bit of price savings there. I actually think TJ Hawkinson is a really strong captain option. Pretty contrarian. He's inexpensive, easy to get there. It's a good question. I mean, Jordan Mason is a viable captain. I wouldn't say my favorite. Again, I think I prefer Jefferson, Jaylen Warren, and Hawkinson. Yeah, I'd say those are my three favorite captains probably at ownership. Addison's honestly viable, I think. Again, we don't know exactly how much they're going to use him in his first game. Jacob says it feels like it's a double kicker line with one in the captain kind of game. Definitely does feel like that. Honestly, I would not be not opposed to playing kicker in captain here. Sean said leaving 9,700 left on the table, a bit high on this first little line I built. Honestly, I think this is a game where it could play out in a way where it's just low scoring enough. There's not enough touchdowns. So like if the quarterbacks are not in the optimal, we could end up, I think, with a lot of salary left on the table. So like if we end up with, Jefferson, some couple, three kicker / defenses, and then you just get, Jaylen Warren, and trying to find who's another Adam Thielen or Jalen Naylor or Jonnu Smith. I think there's a lot of like low priced options that if this game really duds out, they could score 11 fantasy points and be in the optimal over the quarterbacks. So I would not be that surprised if this is a game where a ton of salary gets left on the table. Could also go the other way, obviously. Where it is, you need Jefferson and Wentz and Jaylen Warren, and suddenly you're using most of the salary just because you have three kind of expensive players. That's obviously within the range of outcomes as well. But I think that this is like more than most games. I would not be surprised if a lot of salary is left on the table in the winning lineup. Because I wouldn't be that surprised if Jonnu Smith outscores, obviously, Calvin Austin and Jordan Addison, and honestly, even like DK Metcalf. Like we could see Jonnu Smith score 11.8 and DK Metcalf has 6.4, and you're leaving a lot of salary on the table. So there's a lot of those like 1v1s where it's like, yeah, the cheap guy would not be that shocking if he outscores the expensive guy. All right. First set of sims done. Top lineup here. We've got Jaylen Warren at captain, with Aaron Rodgers, Chris Boswell, Jordan Mason, Steelers defense, and Will Reichard. You can see the top one here leaves 2,200 on the table. Second one leaves 1,200. Third one leaves 2,200 again, 800, 3,200. A lot of the top lineups here are leaving some amount of salary on the table. Not 9,000. Actually, this one leaves 7,200, the 13th top lineup here. But yeah, a lot of lineups here that are leaving some salary on the table. A lot of Steelers on slots, which breaks my heart as a Vikings fan. The top two, Jaylen Warren and captain. So one of my favorite captains here. Second one has Jaylen Warren with Boswell, Mason, Jefferson, Steelers defense, and Will Reichard. Again, a lot of Will Reichard in these top lineups. Now I'll run the Sims again here because I do want to change things closer to how I want them to be. As far as the Steelers go, it does look like we're getting to a lot of the Steelers that I like here. But I'm a Vikings fan. Come on, I'm going to lean into my homerism here. I'm not going to be playing these lineups that are all Steelers centric. So I'm going to go to the player exposures tab, take a look at my exposures currently. Yeah, we're getting to 51% Rodgers in the flex, 7% at captain right now, only 25% and 1% Carson Wentz. I do not accept it. I will not allow it. Running backs, we've got Jaylen Warren, 52% and 21%. I like that. I like Jaylen Warren quite a bit on the slate. Mason, 39, 40% and 20%. Looks good. 4% Gainwell, not currently getting to any Xavier Scott or Cam Akers. I think I might want to get to a little bit of Xavier Scott. Wide receivers getting to 23% and 12%. Justin Jefferson, not enough. DK Metcalf, 29% and 18%, plenty. Calvin Austin, actually more Calvin Austin than I thought I would get to, 18% and 8%. So getting to more at captain, I guess that kind of makes sense. Not as much Addison as I might like, 4% and 4.5%. 0 of Naylor or Thielen. So again, I'm going to be changing these things a little bit. None of getting to 1% Roman Wilson. None of Scotty Miller or Ben Skowronek. Tight end, we're getting to 35% Jonnu, 2% in the captain. That looks good. Only 11% Hawkinson, 0 at captain. I'm going to change that. I want a lot more Hawkinson. 3% Pat Freiermuth, none of Josh Oliver, 1%, 0.5% of Darnell Mooney. Defenses, we're getting to 36% Vikings, 3% at captain. That looks great. 29% Steelers, 0.5% at captain. That looks great. Kickers, 79% Chris Boswell, 60% Will Reichard. So there's where all my ownership is going. We're just getting all the kickers here. All right, we're gonna be doing another crunch here. I guess we don't call it a crunch when we're using Run the Sims. We're gonna be making some changes to get to more of the players that I want to get to. Because these Run the Sims guys, they don't know ball. Which is to say they're not Vikings homers like I am. Okay. Let's see. Can you see what Captain Hawk lineups look like? Yeah, after I get some. They didn't give me any in that first set, but let me get there. All right, so we're going to change up the Vikings to score 24 points and shock the world. Pace of 57. We'll leave the rush rate for now. We're also going to move up TJ Hawkins. He's already got a pretty strong market share, but he's just getting so much ownership here. I'm going to move down the ownership on Hawkinson. What does RG have it at? Oh, they're not. Got to reset this. Hold. Let's see. They've got him at 22%. I actually would be sort of surprised if he's that low. I think this is actually probably a more accurate number, but I'm going to change it anyway because I want to get more Hawkinson. I'm going to move the captain down to 2%. What else? I want a little bit more Xavier Scott, I think. I might get more just because I moved up the points and pace. I'm just going to move him up to an 18% rushing market share. Actually, I should have done. Here, I'm going to move this to 16, and then I'm going to smart adjust up to 18. There we go. I wasn't getting to any Naylor or Thielen I would like to be, or I wasn't getting much Addison either. So maybe I need to move up even more here to get to the players I want. I'm going to move the pace up to 59. the rush rate down to 46. We'll see if I get more of all my Vikings receivers now. All right, and then I was getting a lot more of Rodgers than Carson Wentz. I'm going to move Wentz's flex ownership down to 56. Captain ownership down to 7. Rodgers flex ownership up to 50. Leave the captain at 7. Man, I'd like to get a little bit more Roman Wilson. I'm just going to move his receiving market share up to, I'm going to click Smart Adjust, up to 5%. I was getting a lot of Jonnu, which I like. Let's run it like this and see what happens. Skull is right. Mike knows. Mike knows why I do things the way I do. $10 hours until this game starts. Juwan Jennings expected to play, but likely limited. Okay. Interesting. Not seeing any news on Joey Porter Jr. The Smart Adjust, it proportionally changes things. So if I change one player's rushing market share, so like their share of the rushing, it also changes it proportionally changes their share of the touchdown. So if I move up, if a player has 10% rushing market share and 10% rushing touchdown market share, and I move it up to 12% rushing market share, it'll also move up their rushing touchdown market share to 12%. Or if it starts at 10 and 5 and I move it up to the rushing share up to 12, it'll move the market share of the touchdowns up to 6. So it's all just proportional. Live until lock. Yep, I'll be going for another 10 hours here. Hope you're all ready. We're going to make the best lineups. Calculating payouts. Then we'll send it over to Shady. He'll do his mental math for me. Give me the best lineups. What is pace? Pace is just the number of teams, number of plays the team is expected to play. The offense, the number of plays the offense is expected to run. So if an offense is expected to run fewer plays, it'll be 54. If they're expected to run a lot of plays, it'll be 65. Oh yeah, what is the news on Jonnu Smith? Let me look at the latest injury news. I believe all the latest that I saw was pretty positive. Let's see. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong page because they're not giving me the latest. Fairly certain I had seen some positive news. Limited participate in Thursday and Friday's practice. Okay. I thought I had seen that both Jonnu and Jaylen Warren expected to play. Oh, he was initially listed as resting vet, and then they added a hip issue. So yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes on that because if you're making lineups right now, like I am, we are going to need that injury report. Let's see. Yeah, I mean that would obviously change things quite a bit if Jonnu Smith is out. We would want to play a lot more. Pat Fryermuth would play a little bit of um, what's the name? The Darnell Washington as well. Yeah, I'm annoyed that I might have to set an alarm. I'm going to set it right before the game starts, so that I can just quick make some things change some things. All right, new set of lineups. A lot more Vikings. I'm way more comfortable with these lineups at the top. We got Justin Jefferson at captain, Carson Wentz, Chris Boswell, Jaylen Warren, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Will Reichard in the top one, leaves 14 on the table. Second lineup, Jaylen Warren, captain, Carson Wentz, Chris Boswell, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Will Reichard. Somebody asked me about looking at TJ Hawkinson captain lineups, and I'm not getting to. Oh, here's one. Top first one we get TJ Hawkinson with Carson Wentz, Chris Boswell, Jaylen Warren, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, leaves 1,500 on the table. That looks really strong to me. Still not getting to a ton of TJ Hawkinson lineups. Let's look at the exposures. So a quarterback up to, okay, so now way more comfortable with this. 40, 49, 50% Carson Wentz in the flex, 11% at captain. By the way, I'm looking at these shady exposure columns over here because I'm using the shady optimizer tool. These are the two on the far right that I'm looking at to look at the exposures I'm currently getting. Rodgers at 28% in the flex, 0.1% at captain. Good. Running backs, we're getting to 48 and 14. Jaylen Warren, that looks great. I think Jaylen Warren's probably my favorite Steeler on the slate. Jordan Mason, 35%, 25%. It's a lot. I think I'm okay with it. 6% Kenneth Gainwell. No real issue with getting to a little bit of Kenneth Gainwell. 3% Xavier Scott. So I pushed that up just a little bit. Don't think I need a ton. Wide receivers, we have Justin Jefferson, 36%, 21%. That all looks good. DK Metcalf, 19%, 8.5%. That's fine with me. I wouldn't mind getting a little bit more. Jordan Addison, 18% and 7%. Wouldn't mind getting a little bit more. Calvin Austin, 11 and 4. Glad to bring that down a little. I want more of Naylor and Thielen. I'm currently getting 2.5% Naylor, 4% Thielen. I actually want a little bit of Roman Wilson also, not currently getting any. At tight end, we're at 29 and 3 of TJ Hawkinson. So that came up a little bit. Wouldn't mind still getting more, particularly at captain. We're at 26% and 3% for Jonnu. That looks good if we assume Jonnu's in. 1% Fryermuth. I would want more than this of Fryermuth, even though I prefer Jonnu. If he's healthy, I still want more of Fryermuth. Also, like Jonnu could be limited if this hip issue is real. So Fryermuth, has some extra outs there. I don't mind going to a little bit there. Josh Oliver, I just want a little bit, not a ton of Josh Oliver. Defenses, Vikings 34 and 2% looks good. Steelers 24 and 1 looks good. Kickers 75% Boswell, 52% Reichard, 1 and 0 in the captain. Those are more than I want. All right, I'm going to do just one more, I think. How do I get to less of the kickers? Can I just lower their projection? That might be it. But let me see. I'm going to move the Vikings up one more to 25 points. Pace of 60. Rush rate down to 45%. Xavier Scott market share up to, I might have to unclick it and reclick it for it to work the second time around. Xavier Scott rushing market share up to, oh no, I've got him at too much ownership. I'm going to move Xavier Scott's ownership down to 5%. Going to bring Naylor's ownership down to 7%. Who can I? Okay. I want a little bit more. I think I might need to do something to get more of Naylor and Thielen. Just going to move Naylor up to, maybe move them both up to 9% receiving market share. Get rid of Cam Akers. Nah, I'll leave it. All right, that seems fine. I wasn't getting to much of Steelers receivers. I do want a little bit more of Roman Wilson, so I'm going to move up his receiving market share to 6%. Get rid of Ben Skowronek, maybe. I'll get rid of Ben. I don't really want to get any of Ben Skowronek anyway. Now, I think I might, let me see if I can just move down the projections on the kickers and if that does it for me. So 10 for Boswell, 9 for Reichard. Will that do it? I'm going to move them both to 9.4 for Boswell. Let's see if that brings down my kicker exposures a little bit. Because I think if I'm getting that much of the kickers, I'm never going to get enough of the cheaper receivers. True, you could just swap all of your Jonnu to Moose potentially. Ooh, that's a good question. Who's going to score more, Chargers or Bills? Probably say Bills. I mean, they have the higher total. That's kind of the obvious answer, I guess. But I love the Chargers on the main slate. That actually that might be my favorites. That's up there with my favorite stacks also on the main slate. Calculating payouts. Sorry, I'm responding to somebody in my Discord. Telling him to come here because he's asking questions about Run the Sims, and I happen to be using Run the Sims. Jacob likes Pat Mahomes stacks. Who are you stacking him with? Xavier Worthy, Tyquan Thornton. Sean, you want me to tell you my favorite lineup of the ones that come out? All right, we'll see. We'll see what comes out. I'll let you know if any stand out to me. I mean, I love that last run with the TJ Hawkinson captain lineup. I thought it was pretty fun. All right, here we go. Top lineup now. I moved the Vikings up, and now we're getting Carson Wentz captain lineups. I actually don't love Carson Wentz captain lineups, so maybe I need to move his captain ownership back up a little bit. Top lineup here, though. I mean, I don't hate it. It's fine. Full on mega stack with Carson Wentz, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. We'll bring it back with Jonnu and Jaylen Warren. Actually, as far as Carson Wentz stacks go, that one looks pretty good to me. Get all my favorite Vikings in there with my favorite Steelers. How could I complain? Second lineup, Justin Jefferson, Carson Wentz, Jonnu Smith, Jordan Mason, Vikings defense, Will Reichard. That looks good. Another Wentz stack, Jordan Mason, the fourth lineup. Let me see if we're still getting some TJ Hawkinson captain lineups. Here we go. TJ Hawkinson captain with Carson Wentz, Jaylen Warren, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, Vikings defense. That looks great to me. just the Vikings crush. Jaylen Warren gets there with a lot of PPR points potentially. Here's a TJ Hawkinson captain that leaves a lot of salary on the table. Carson Wentz, Jaylen Warren, Justin Jefferson, Vikings defense, and Steelers defense. It's okay. So yeah, if I were to play one of these lineups, I would probably choose a Hawkinson captain lineup. I think I'm fine. I'm fine with just playing this one. Leaves 900 on the table. Hawkinson, Wentz, Warren, Addison, Jefferson, Vikings defense. I'm trying to think what was different in the one that left 600 more on the table. Who else would have been in here? I don't know. Don't know what the difference would have been. Maybe it was DK Metcalf instead of Wentz. I think that's 600 cheaper. That would be also viable. Leaves a little bit more on the table. But I think I like this. And you're doing the full Vikings onslaught, so Wentz makes sense in this lineup. Nice little rhyme there. All right, let me look at my exposures. Quarterback, we've got Wentz 55% and 70%. So I might have overdone it with moving the Vikings way up, getting into way more Wentz than Rodgers. When I don't actually like Wentz that much more than Rodgers. I think I just like his pass catchers more. But I like him a little bit more than Rodgers. Pretty big disparity here though at quarterback. At running back, we've got 70% Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren looks great to me. Jordan Mason 26% and 21%. So I'm going to be a little bit under the field as it stands with Jordan Mason. I think I'm okay with that. 6% Kenneth Gainwell, 5% Xavier Scott. That looks good to me. 46 and 21% Justin Jefferson. I like Jefferson quite a bit. We're down at below 20% DK Metcalf. I'd actually like to move that up a little bit. Jordan Addison, we're at 37%. That's cool. 14% Calvin Austin. I'm below the field pretty significantly, so I'm okay with it. Up to 15% Thielen and 6% Naylor. So I'm glad I'm getting up a little bit more on Thielen and Naylor. Still would like some Roman Wilson, so maybe we need to move up his target share a little bit further. Tight end, we're at 43 and 5 for TJ Hawkinson. So finally getting to Hawkinson exposures that I like. 28 and 4 for Jonnu. Again, I like Jonnu quite a bit. Only 2.4% Pat Freiermuth. We need to pay attention to Jonnu's injury status because with this we'll need to change things quite a bit. Josh Oliver, I don't have any right now. I probably want a little bit of Josh Oliver in a 150 set, but not a huge priority. Darnell Washington, I would only want some if Jonnu was out. Defenses 36 and 1 for the Vikings looks good. 33 and 3.5 for the Steelers looks good. Kickers. So I think moving down the projections did work to get to a more reasonable amount of the kickers. 29% Reichard, 25% Boswell. That looks good to me. So this is my favorite run so far. I'm not going to keep running it right now. I will probably just put these in. Maybe I'll end up playing them. Maybe I'll wake up and do another run in the morning. But this looks pretty close to what I want. So as long as Jonnu is in and obviously Jaylen Warren is in, I think I'll probably just stick with these. All right, let's see. Peppertoni, do you ever compare your actual lineup results versus the initial sim results? How do they do? I have not tried that yet this year. I haven't been tracking closely enough with my Showdown stuff. Even like dupes. I started asking Adam to look at it for me just the past couple lineups, past couple slates, and I had one where I had pretty low number of dupes, a lot of under 5 dupe lineups, and then one of the slates where I was massively duped. So I need to start tracking it better because there are things that you can do if you need to. For example, you can go in and if you're getting to 2 highly duped lineups, you can always go into, let's see, your lineups filter and just filter it down to, let's see, lineup frequency. where's the dupes? There's predicted dupes must be less than or equal to. You could like move that to less than or equal to 5, 3. I don't know what the number would be, but like there are ways to, limit the types of lineups you get. So you really limit your dupes more than you do. I have not been doing that. I've been, so I will say I've been happy with the results that I've had. Again, I haven't won any of these showdown slates yet this year. I won the 2-game slate, but it was the mini max for $200, so it wasn't that exciting. But I've had pretty great sweats on 4 of the showdown slates already this year, which is more than usual at this point in the year for me. I've been again, the last week I was winning $6,000 with 40 seconds left, wasn't fading all that much, and then lost it all. Lost all except for I won $200 on that slate. The week prior I was winning with 3 minutes left. So I'm satisfied with the sweats that I've had, and sweats on slates where I ended up profiting just a little bit. But no, I have not been tracking closely, which probably you should be doing. Honestly, I've never tracked it all that closely just because Showdown is so random. I just kind of take the wins when they come, but certainly something that I probably should be doing more of. You can probably see how the initial sims are doing by tracking some of the Run the Sims guys, I would think. Anyway, speaking of, Nerdy 10 are absolutely crushing every sport right now. All right. I think that is going to be it. I'm not going to keep running these sims here. That's going to be it for this show. I will be back for Sunday Night Football tomorrow. You can find me there. And of course, Monday, we're going to have the 2-gamer again. Adam and I will be there in the mid-morning. I'll be back for night. No, this is definitely not true, Peppertoni. Not in 2025. I don't. No, I should absolutely be tracking. I just, I'm busy. I'm lazy. I don't know what it is, but I have not been doing so. All right. Thanks, guys. I will see you in the Discord. I will see you tomorrow for Sunday Night Football. Skol Vikings. See you guys later. Good night. Good luck.